How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the channel. So this video is going to be a little bit different from what I normally put out on this channel. I'm not going to be playing any games. There will be some game footage shown during this video. However, this video is basically for Thanksgiving. In this video, I'm going to talk about a couple of games, mostly from my childhood, that I am thankful for various reasons. Throughout my life. Some of these games have really had a profound impact on me, kind of helped me through points in life. Just left a mark for whatever reason on my life. And I just wanted to make a quick little video, just a few minutes here talking about a couple of them. Before I get too into the weeds, I just want to say happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Hopefully, everybody out there is doing okay. I know times are tough right now with the economy and just the day to day, just life. Life is tough in general, without anything extra heaped on top of it. So whether you're unemployed, which I was just there a couple months ago, I spent 8 months out of this year unemployed until a couple months ago. I'm working a job that I really don't like, but it is a means to an end. To get myself back to where I need to be. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for my kid. I'm grateful for many things, but this isn't about that. But hopefully, you guys have things that you're grateful for, and things that are keeping you moving, keeping you one foot in front of the other. But this is about video games, so let's not get too depressing on this channel. So without further ado, um, let's see here. I got a couple of them out. I don't know which one I really want to start with here. Um, Actually, I'll start with this one. And all the games I'm going to talk about, I don't have physically out. Some of them are like boxed up in storage, but some of these I do keep around. Just I just like having them around. So the first game on my list that I'm thankful for is going to be Super Metroid here for the Super Nintendo. God, I played so much of this fucking game as a kid. I got to the point where I could speed run this game, get the best ending, and get 100%, like no problem. I memorized everything, all the item locations, all the fuck, what's it called? The God, I can't think of the term where basically you can get to some place earlier than intended. Um, if you knew some tricks, sequence breaking. I think that's what it's called. I knew all that shit, dude. I love this game. This is still hands down my favorite Metroid game. It is still my favorite Metroidvania game. I will put an asterisk next to that. I think the original Hollow Knight is on par with Super Metroid. And that game I'm also grateful for. So I don't have that one physically accessible at the moment, but Hollow Knight is definitely there with Super Metroid. But I love this game. I replayed this game so many times. I still have my Nintendo strategy guide for it somewhere around here in this room, amongst all the mess. To me, this was the pinnacle of at least 2D Metroid. Dread is good, but it's not Super Metroid. Um, I prefer 2D Metroid. Um, that's not to say that Prime series isn't great. I did enjoy Prime, but to me, I always go back to my childhood. The nostalgia is super strong with this game. Um, I I love this game. It, you know, easily in my top 5 games of all time, easily. Um, yeah, I mean, I really don't want to get too much into the weeds on this. I want to keep this video short. Um, but yeah, Super Metroid, love it. Let's go ahead and get into the next game that I'm super grateful for, and it's also from the Super Nintendo, and it is The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. This is my definitive Zelda game. Everybody talks about, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, being like the goats, and nah, fuck all that. Link to the Past. To me, this is where the Zelda series really came into its own and solidified, you know, its place in pop culture and gaming. This is what set in my opinion, the foundation for every Zelda game after. Like, this is where you know, it really became Zelda. I mean, the very first game is, iconic. The second game is polarizing. Some people love it, some people hate it. More people hate it than love it, I guess. But this was a return to form, back to that, bird's eye view, top down view, whatever you want to call it. And it just really set the groundwork for everything that would come. I mean, yeah, Breath of the Wild is great. That's probably my second favorite after Link to the Past. But to me, this will always be the best Zelda game. There's a reason it was like the number one rated game in Nintendo Power for years and years and years on end. I put hundreds of hours into this easily, just replaying it. Same with Super Metroid. Man, fucking Super Nintendo, y'all. That was like a golden age of gaming, especially as a kid, you know, not even a teenager yet playing these. This is my Zelda game. This is my comfort game. Both of these games right here, these still get replayed. Um, Maybe not on the physical cartridges anymore because I'm pretty sure the batteries are dead and my saves won't work. But yeah, I'll throw those up on the Nintendo Online or whatever and play those at least maybe once a year. Um, they stay in the rotation, and if I need a comfort game, if I'm like feeling shitty because life is just like kicking me in the nuts, I can just throw these in and just, you know, put in a couple hours or shit. I can beat Metroid in a couple hours and not even really try. And it always just puts me in a better mood. But yeah, Link to the Past, definitely, in my opinion, the GOAT Zelda game. Um, I will say Breath of the Wild is a close second for me. It really kind of, I know people complain Breath of the Wild doesn't have, the traditional dungeons and everything, but as far as like the feeling of exploration and kind of like getting lost in the world, which kind of takes me back to the original games, um, that feeling is definitely there. Um, but yeah, let's just keep this rolling. I don't want this video getting too long. So I'll save this, save the best for last. So the next game on my list is going to be Final Fantasy Tactics. If you guys have been following the channel, I just recently finished my Final Fantasy Tactics, the Evilise Chronicles, the remaster playthrough. Um, After Final Fantasy VII, this is my favorite Final Fantasy. Um, the story, some people criticize the story, saying like it's kind of cliche and stuff. Like maybe nowadays, like back then, you didn't really have games that went that deep into like politics and religion and shit like that. That was kind of taboo to talk about back in the day when people thought video games were the fucking the demon and Satan and everything corrupting children's minds. Um, yeah, I mean, I love that game to death. I replayed it multiple times, just hundreds of hours poured into that. Um, yeah, Final Fantasy Tactics. It's awesome. Um, there was another game. I wish I knew where it was. I think it's somewhere in this man cave. I think it's boxed up though. Um, Resident Evil 2 will be the next game that I'm thankful for. So let me preface this. I love the original Resident Evil. To me, the original Resident Evil 1, is still probably my favorite just because the the locale, the mansion, it's fucking iconic. Um, it's the start of the franchise. It's, introduces you to so many great characters and that would, over time just grow and, the plot just thickens and, it's a great game. But Resident Evil 2, that's the one I'm most thankful for because it basically expanded everything that the first game did and made it better. I don't really like Leon as much as I do like Chris. I'm a Chris fan till the day I die. I'm a fucking Jill fan until the day I die. Um, but Resident Evil 2, so much replayability. I replayed that thing so many times, unlocking all the different costumes and weapons and secret characters, Hunk and Tofu and all that shit. I did all that shit. Um, so I mean, the Resident Evil 2 remaster is also a great game. Um, I'm glad that all these old games that I really love have been getting the really good remaster treatment. Um, but yeah, Resident Evil 2, not my favorite Resident Evil, but the one I'm most thankful for because it did everything that the first game did, but better. So it may not be my favorite, but it is my one I'm most thankful for, just because it is more fun. It is more fun than the first game. Um, man, I sound like a hypocrite saying it's not my favorite, but then putting it on the Swiss. Um, but I think you can look at something and be objective and be like, yeah, that might not be my favorite, but that game's fucking way better, and it's awesome. Um, I mean, I guess going into this next game that I'm thankful for, you could kind of say that too. Like a lot of people love this next game. A lot of people hate it and say it's like super overrated. But you can't deny that fucking Final Fantasy VII, you can't deny that this game was not fucking groundbreaking when it came out. I mean, it even says on the fucking back of the box, quite possibly the greatest game ever made. And at the time, everybody, for the most part, thought that. This shit was like a Hollywood production almost. That is literally my favorite game of all time. Um, I was 12 years old when I played it. That's my first Final Fantasy. That game alone sold me on wanting a PlayStation. Until then, I was just content playing my Super Nintendo. I had so many great games. Some of them some of them I've already mentioned on this video. Um, I still remember when I got that game. I begged my grandmother who I lived with and who raised me. I begged and begged for a PlayStation. I need this. I need Final Fantasy VII. I saw it in the magazines. All the production art and concept art and stuff that never actually made it into the game. Like the characters look so different by the time I actually got to the game. But just seeing those spreads in those magazines and those ads and everything, like I was so enamored. I do remember, and I maybe talked about this in a different video for my Final Fantasy series, but I would always see these games, these Final Fantasy games in like Nintendo Power and stuff, Game Pro, and these other magazines. Like, man, these games fucking look cool. This looks cool, but never actually got around to playing them until seven. I'm like, and there's just something about seven. It's got that kind of like that steampunk, futuristic but still fantasy vibe to it. It's got that anime kind of style to it. And at that time, like I was really getting into anime. It was like kind of niche here in America at that time still. Um, Before everybody turned into a fucking weeb. And it wasn't cool to like anime. It's got that anime vibe to it. It's just that's the game that drew me into it. But yeah, I remember getting that for Christmas of 1997. I remember it being under the tree, and I knew what it was. I could tell by the shape. Like it was just wrapped. I knew what it was. So what I would do at night, I would sneak in there in the living room and get under the tree and get this, take it back to my room, lock the door, and I would take like a little X-Acto knife, fucking little 12-year-old with his little razor knife thing, uh, cut the tape open carefully, let the game kind of like shimmy out of the packaging, and I would just I'd open the game and look at the manual and stuff, and just read over it, and like it's like I was so hyped to play that game. It's like when your mom takes you to the store, and on the ride home in the car, like you're just reading the box. It was that times 100 for me. Like I still remember the way that the paper smells from the manual. That was that was the game for me. Um, that did it. That got me into JRPGs, got me into Final Fantasy, got me into PlayStation. You know, that game, I'm glad I really got into JRPGs. I felt like that really helped me as a kid as far as, making me smarter. I am a firm believer that, RPGs in general, especially back in the day when you had to read everything, greatly expanded my vocabulary, helped me out in school because I ended up taking like honors English and advanced courses and stuff, and I owe that to video games. Reading video games. They weren't stories for that were dumbed down for little kids. They had mature themes and you know, but yeah, Final Fantasy VII. That's my game. Um, you know, I mentioned some remasters for some of these other games, like Final Fantasy VII just got the remaster treatment, and some people don't like it. I love it. I mean, it's not a one for one remaster or remake, I should say, but I like what they're doing with it. They could have just fucking bombed on it, honestly, and I probably still like it, just out of bias, to be completely honest. But I like the combat. A lot of people are hating that it's not, strictly turn based, but I like it. You know, if you don't like it, that's your fucking opinion, man. You know, as the dude would say. Well, that's just like your opinion, man. But yeah, that's easily my favorite game of all time. All these games I mentioned, easily all in my top 10 games of all time. Maybe I should do a ranking video at some point. But yeah, definitely thankful for Final Fantasy VII. Man, I could probably go through my collection here and dig out other games that I'm really thankful for, but these are the ones that really, to me. Oh, I will throw in another game. It just kind of popped in my head. So for a while, I was off of consoles. Um, I would say early in the GameCube life cycle is when I got out of console gaming for many years. And during that time, I was mostly playing games on like the PC, uh, like MMORPGs, so massively multiplayer online RPGs. I don't know if they still fucking call them that anymore. And that started with Ultima Online, which is kind of like, for people that don't know, because it's old as fuck and most people don't know anything past fucking Fortnite. Um, Ultima Online is kind of like the grandfather MMORPG. It was there before EverQuest, before WoW, before all that shit. It basically set the foundation for what an online MMORPG, should be. Um, and that thing's been kicking since 1997, and I think it's still running. I think the services are still up and running, paid subscription, all that shit. Um, I put years into that. I love that game. And that got me into MMORPGs just kind of in general. It was like a gateway drug for those type of games for me. I spent, I don't know, man, how many years was between the early GameCube life cycle and like probably the back half of the Xbox 360 life cycle. That gap is how long I was out of consoles, because I didn't come back to consoles until um, I guess Modern Warfare 2, because I had the Modern Warfare 2 like edition Xbox 360. That's what I got back into gaming with. Um, that's how I found out about fucking achievements and went down that addiction filled rabbit hole of hunting achievements. But that's for another video. But yeah, during that time it was just online RPGs, Ultima Online, Lineage 2, a little bit of World of Warcraft, Ion, Warhammer Age of Reckoning. Fuck, what else was there? Ragnarok Online. Did I say Lineage 2? Lineage 2. That was a fucking great one. But yeah, I want to give a shout out to Ultima Online, the OG MMORPG. Thankful for that game. Um, to give you context, that was like the late 90s when I was playing that. I was still fucking on AOL in the AOL chat rooms, on dial up. I remember we got DSL, and when we got DSL, like I became a god in Ultima Online because anybody with DSL would just massacre anybody still on dial up. But yeah, I just wanted to do a quick shout out to Ultima Online for being, in my opinion, still the best MMORPG. If they would just remake that game today, like if they would go back to like the Renaissance era of Ultima Online and like just remake it with like modern graphics, that thing would be a fucking juggernaut, in my opinion. I'd pay good money for that. But anyways, I don't want this video going too much longer. You know, these are games I'm thankful for. I'm thankful for games just in general. Thinking like, man, of all the times to be alive, I'm alive during the time when we have all these great fucking games. You know, that kept me company as a kid. You know, my childhood wasn't horrible, horrible. It wasn't great either. You know, the area I lived in wasn't that great. Didn't have a lot of friends locally um, to play with, so I did turn to video games a lot in my youth. I mean, I still turn to them now. You know, but yeah, thankful for video games. Thankful for the games I mentioned. Anyways, hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving. I'm gonna be working, so I'm actually filming this like a day early. Uh, but I'm gonna be working. Hopefully, I can squeeze in some food time with people. But if shit's not going quite your way, you know, just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Things will get better. Um, hopefully, everybody has something you're thankful for. You know, even if you don't think you do, you probably still do. But um, hope everybody's Thanksgiving is great. If I don't talk to y'all in another video between now and then, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's, all that jazz as well. But anyways, I'm gonna call that the video. I've talked long enough. Thanks for listening to me. Have a great day. Peace.